Next talk is by Mr. Peter Hill, he of the blue Dr. Martens, and Court Jester. And as someone said to me before the conference started, how can I not come to Derby and learn what a Court Jester does? And Peter's going to explain his journey and offer some provocation, I think, which is...
Yeah, some provocation, some encouragement, and do feel free to ask me questions in the breaks and things afterwards, if that helps you.
Okay, so off we go. Strap yourself in.
You have been warned. Well, first of all, thank you so much for coming today, and I could say you're very brave, but actually I feel quite in awe. I know some of you are sort of starting to discover what you're up to, and you have a massive opportunity for changing the world we live in, so thank you for that. I never wear a Court Jester hat, but if you ask a really good question, I might do if you're especially kind to me. So I'm going to talk about radical innovation. I'll tell you a bit about my story to provoke you and all the rest of it. So let's make a start. So I'm Peter. I used to be chair of Rolls-Royce Fellows because really my expertise is asking stupid questions. And I think they got fed up with me being a fellow, so I said, well, you make you a chair. That means you can not answer anything, just ask questions. I work for Dr. Mori, who's owner, president of DMG Mori, is the world's largest machine tool company in Japan, Germany, States, and all the rest of it. I never realized quite how much I learnt from Rolls-Royce, good and bad, till I went and worked outside and see other possibilities. So that's an absolute delight. My brief is to teach his organization to be crazy. I have access to everything. I have no mandate apart from doing that, and I just send in invoices when I feel like sending in invoices. So that's a really nice consultancy job if you can get it. More importantly, I'm a dad and a grandfather, so I probably have learnt more from that about sort of asking, like small children do, why, and why. I thought I asked just stupid questions. They ask great questions, and I am in awe of what they do. So if you go away from this thinking, perhaps I could afford to be a bit more childlike, then that wouldn't be a bad thing. And the Court Jester, I just used to get bored in Rolls-Royce conferences where I'm chief operations, chief designer, chief this, Court Jester. What did he just say? I thought he'd just mess with people a little bit. But really, I guess, I am medieval, but really I work for the king. He doesn't kill me. I ask stupid questions. Occasionally something's really valuable, and it works. So in the course of writing a book, and you ought to all have a go at writing a book, seeing what your story is, and it's about transformations. As an executive coach, how people get transformed, and it's beautiful. About factories, and I've been involved from the earliest days in transforming Rolls-Royce factories, but they're now businesses and everything else, and this approach, this childlike questioning seems to work really well. So I hope you enjoy it. I just put this serious stuff up front, so when I say the stupid stuff, I'm not entirely talking out of my ear. Almost entirely, but not completely. So we need changes urgently. This is why we're having a session today. I think we need both the incremental change, what Ed's going to talk about, but we also need step changes. I loved Alex and Paoli's story. That kind of provoked me thinking, why couldn't we have done that 50 years ago? What was it? Did we need to wait for Alex and Paoli to come along and do it? Or who had the stupid idea? So I'm going to share something of my story, but I'm even more introvert than Keith is. So I'm only doing this on the basis to provoke you and your story. What can you do with the rest of your life? You can buy the book next summer when it comes out, but it's massive. So this is a little matrix, because I'm an engineer, I suppose. And from top to bottom is how bold people are, and from left to right is your knowledge base. So most of us start on the top left as infants, so we have lots of boldness, stuff everything in our mouth, touch of fire, all the things we shouldn't actually do. We discover stuff, and parents look on benignly and pick up the mess and all the rest of it. We don't know very much, but we're learning. And then we go to school, and then we get to stop saying why, and why, which is really tragic, and we get taught how stuff works. So I might have been messing with water in the top here, and then you get taught how water flows down a hill, and then you get really professional at it, and you might become a plumber. and earn more than most of us. But you're now sort of, it's not very bold because you're applying processes and all the rest of it. But a bit which I somehow discovered is how to sort of take knowledge, some knowledge, and find the boldness again to ask those childlike questions and to be radical and ask, so why can't we? You know, we Japanese have the 5 whys. I have the 5 why nots. You can't do this. Why not? Why not? Come on, why not? So this is like a flow of life and discovering ourselves in it. And I think my encouragement is I want everybody to be free to play in all those areas. So I'm still learning. I'm still messing. I'm still making mistakes. How can you do that? The other thing I've discovered, which is a really big surprise, is having been involved in some modest-sized projects in Rolls-Royce, is actually I seem to have more impact now by scattering seeds. And I was kind of thinking, how did I ever get to have the role I did? I only got a 2-2 at university. How did I come to have this wonderful experiences? And I thought, my grandmother planted seeds in my life. She taught me how to ask questions. I was frantically shy, so she taught me, ask questions, darling. Everyone would think you're really wise if you ask questions. So, and there's other things she planted. But I've discovered that actually words of encouragement, kindness, and all sorts of random places, it's interesting how it comes back and you see stuff actually happen as a result of that. And certainly working in this Japanese organization where I have no program management responsibility, only responsibility for initiating ideas or seeds, has sort of entirely turned my idea of status upside down. I don't have a team. I have a very patient Japanese senior exec who's my minder, but apart from that, I don't have a team, but we plant seeds. So storytelling, I'd say, is probably the next most important thing as an engineer. Maybe most, which is really irritating, the whole thing about how to tell stories, and I suspect Alex and Paoli did that, how they told the story, why they should work in a different way. And to get beneath people's skin and to think, yeah, why don't we try that? I discovered this thing called a sort of a right-to-left methodology, which is really about suspending disbelief. Where do we want to be in 5 years' time? How great would that be? Get a team envisioned with that. Let's go play and do remarkable things. And I'll show you some examples. I think a lot of engineering organisations sometimes are a bit like this, you know, low-hanging fruit. Next 6 months, what are we focused on? We must do this. You know, are they overzealous bird spotters or what? But they are fixated on this solitary bird, this problem which has to be solved. And I think, yeah, I think there's more to life than that, and we'll come back to that. The thing about radical, radical comes from a word like radish or roots. It goes down to what are we really here to do? And many people think that radical means reckless. I would suggest to you that you're reckless if you're not radical. And by that, what I mean is you can see in the picture here, for many businesses, many people don't quite see it, but they're fundamentally there to delight the customer. What does the customer really want? Well, most people never get to hear what the customer really, really wants. What does he dream of? What would make him go, wow? Nobody's talking about that, providing that at the moment. Yes, clearly organisations have to make a profit. You know, there's a factory on the left with a money printing machine shelling out the right-hand side. You've got to be financially stable to keep in business. But there's also something about enjoying the process. I love the comments about coaching and motivation and people finding their Ikigai. But if that's what an organisation's for, then the tempting question is, well, if you're not delighting the customer, if you're not enjoying the process, and if you're not making money, then what are you doing? And how are you going to get back to this radical reason for existence? Again, on the coaching, I like holistic systemic coaching, which is treating people as whole people. The person you have at work is the person you have at home, is the person who's changing the dirty nappies. I did occasionally do that. So I just show this sort of picture here to say, whatever you are here, looking all very smart and beautiful and all the rest of it, actually, there's a home life, there's your dreams, there's the things which just make you come alive. And I come back to that. How do we actually bring all of that to your colleagues and customers and all the rest of it, as well as accepting and recognising that there's trauma and hurt and disappointments, and how can we help people on that? And we've had a lot of good success in systematically helping people around those sorts of issues. So I think, yeah, life is not compartmentalised, though we are very tempted to do it. Why am I wearing a tie today? I really don't know. I don't normally. I make mistakes. I think a lot of mistakes are really good to make, but there are some mistakes where I have reduced Helen to tears. This was one of them. I really fancied a decent LaserJet printer going back 20 years ago, inkjets blocking up, costing money. I was frustrated. I had done the Excel Genco analysis in my dreams to say, this is the lowest life cycle cost solution. I unpackaged it, it's an enormous thing in our open plan living room, big black box, that looks impressive. And my daughter, Josie, I don't know, maybe 8 or 9 at the time, said, Mum's not gonna like that. And it just wasn't on the Excel spreadsheet. I hadn't thought there are other customers apart from myself. That was a harsh lesson, yes. That was not a great conversation. So we can make mistakes, but I think most of them I'd say I really welcome. I think small children are good at making mistakes. You build a tower, you knock it down, you do a variance, and that's how you find where the real boundaries are. Not the safe boundaries where you can get R&D funding, but the unsafe boundaries where you can invent new processes like I was involved with. Another sort of learning point, this is from my 3-year-old granddaughter, Esme. Like most small children, she doesn't want to go to bed. She really doesn't want to go to bed. So one night she says to her mother, Mummy, we have options. You can take me to your bed, you can give me milk and biscuit, or you can sit on the naughty step. Josie, who's got a first in English, can dance with words, was stunned. Okay, it's a cutesy story, but how many 33-year-old and 53-year-old engineers have I heard who say, I don't know, I've got a problem, I don't know what the solution is, I told you it wouldn't work, I tried 10 years ago. So I've used this in sales conferences and think, if a 3-year-old can say, here's a tricky situation, how do I create options? I'm sure a 33-year-old ought to be able to as well. So it's just kind of fascinating, especially, it's horrendous becoming a grandparent because you think you're that much older, but actually you have a real luxury, not just giving them back, but actually you can really learn from children in a way which you can't with your own children because they're a blur. So then, as a coach, I started to think, okay, so how does life start to work? So, but who do you think you are? At the top there, the self-limiting beliefs, I don't do this, I don't do conference talks, I don't do whatever else it is. And at the bottom is who you really are. Actually, I might say at the top, who do I think I am? Well, I think I'm very shy, but actually, I can do shy and I can do extrovert if I have to. And then left to right is, because these things interact as to how you see yourself and your self-limiting beliefs as to what you think you can do. If you think you're always going to fail, well, you probably won't commit to anything very brave. If you think, actually, making mistakes is okay in a safe way with a group of friends, we can have a laugh, we can have a cry, then you can do some magic. So this interaction of how you think of yourself and the things you do are fascinating, the way they're interwoven. How we relate to each other in teams, and I thought I wish I'd had someone like Alex sort of 30, 40 years ago, because I think I did sort of rapid stumbling rather than agile. Didn't really have time to think how this was all actually working. But I think at the top is how we listen to each other, how we relate to each other, which is also partially down to how we relate to ourselves. If you don't know who you are, what you dream about, what you get out of bed for, who you're created to be, your Ikigai, then it's quite hard to flourish as much as you were created to be. So in a way, there's these sort of roots going down from seeing your full potential being realized, success, trusted relationships, Or do you just have safe relationships, survival relationships? So I'm an engineer. I don't think this stuff, but now I'm starting to realise the hard way. I have to realise, why do I do the stupid things I do, and why do other people do, and why do some teams work and other teams not? And it's about how we relate to ourselves, first of all, because you can't love other people more than you love yourself. But then how do you see other people? And again, having small children is good for welcoming people who don't have all the answers and make messes. But I think this is a really profound, this transformation. So I've seen a lot of people now sort of transformed, from what they thought they could do to what they can do, to how they didn't enjoy life. I had one person, and she said, I now come into work every day expecting to find something wonderful happening. I don't know what it's going to be. And this was someone who was a paranoid worrier 6 months before. And you think, that is just fantastic. And the impact on her colleagues, beautiful. So, Ikigai, waking up to joy. I don't know what you wake up to. Sometimes, something really exciting coming out. Sometimes, I've got to do a conference speech. But I love what I do. I retired 14 years ago. And I don't have to work. I could have been a Celtic monk or something like that, but I decided, I had this invitation from this Japanese friend to come teach Japanese to be crazy. So I thought, that sounds exciting. I don't know how to teach. I don't know how to be crazy. I suppose I am crazy, but why don't we risk it for a biscuit and give it a go? So that's kind of what I've been doing. And like anything with human beings, you have all the ups and downs and the pushbacks, setbacks, frustrations, disappointments, but also the delights, and also thinking, I've got one life to live, and I will not have regrets. I work mainly from our home, which is of the 15th century, was the vicarage for the old church, which has the graveyard. That's a really good reminder, looking out. You've got one life to live, so go and live it well. Don't aspire to this position, status, job, whatever it is, if that's not who you are, that's not who you profoundly were born to be. Go and be dangerous, be yourself. So, that's kind of, for me, when I was about 23 in Rolls-Royce Bristol military, significantly run by the Masons, I was really internally quite angry seeing the caste structure and how people at the lowest level were treated badly. And I thought, I have no idea what I can do about this, but I'd love to see change. I would do anything. I will say yes to if anyone pushes me, nudges me in that direction. So that's how I kind of got into some of this stuff. And the old factories were a bit like the silk mill, as Keith was alluding to. Working practices were not great. I did mechanical engineering, but I thought the bigger challenge is going to be in manufacturing, because all the bright people go to design and all that stuff. Not so many to manufacturing, so I thought, let's go and play in manufacturing. And in many ways, it was horrendous. It used to be that the foreman used to be in their porter cabin, 4 foot above ground level, with the sort of blanked out windows, apart from a little slit which they could look out and see who was pulling their weight and who wasn't. It was awful. It was really, I won't swear, but it was awful. So I thought, I want to do something about that. I think a lot of our attitudes weren't great also. This says, the fool knows the cost of everything and the value of nothing. Oscar, was it Oscar Wilde? Mark Twain, one of them. Anyway, I think at that time, investment in manufacturing was like rock bottom. You only invested if something broke and couldn't be repaired on the 10th repair. Or you don't get investment unless you've managed to make this old horse win the derby, which was never going to happen. So, the attitude towards investment was not great. And even today, it's interesting, most of the world fixate on, it costs that much, rather than saying, it makes that much. So, in the machine tool world, I think these are basically money printing machines. So how much money do you want to print? How many? Why do you only want to replace one of them? So I didn't really understand that was unusual. But in all the factory transformation projects, like nozzle guide vanes at Bristol, McInnes, number blade cell, turbine factory, disc factories. All of those, we swapped out everything. We just went wholesale because you don't know how much money the old stuff is wasting. So, but that's quite an unusual mindset. Normally people say, sticky plaster, do I really have to make a small investment here? But if you can make a good investment here, well, you probably have got things of similar vintage or investment opportunity knocking around the place. And my story is it's much easier to do wholesale transformation than it is to do bitser. The burning platform. So here's this lovely waiter up in the treehouse, luxury eating, and what should we choose from a wine menu? And this is how we make a lot of investment decisions. Shall we do this or shall we do that? And what we don't realise is the whole tree's on fire. And I have met too many customers and people like that who are just oblivious, got severe competition. And they think if I tighten my belt, if I do this, that might be enough. I think actually you've got to think a lot more boldly than that. This was fun. Who's seen the turbine blade factory in Derby? Come on, who's the secret ex-Rolls-Royce employee? Okay. So the turbine factory, this was the first architect-designed manufacturing facility in Rolls-Royce, as far as I know. All the others were sort of mongrels, really, sort of cram it into an existing building or something. So I'd done some transformations down in Bristol with the nozzle guide vane strategy. There were 200 people. We said, okay, let's go from all artisan skills to all CNC. And yeah, it was crass as an idea, but we did it in a fairly timely way. So we ended up making twice as many parts, same number of people, half the cost. So that was a pretty good result on all sorts of levels. But Ron Fair, who was the operations director of turbines at the time, he came down and he said, oh, Peter, you're wasting your time. You ought to do serious parts like turbine blades. So I thought, oh, but that's 2 hours up the road. I don't think so. But he said, okay, I want a world-class legacy facility. I don't think I knew, but he probably had lung cancer at the time, so he really wanted something. No bullshit. Fantastic. So I said, okay, am I allowed to look at anything, like job descriptions? Yes. This, yes. This, yes. Can I have time out to invent some new machining processes? Yes. I think, well, that's really crass. Normally you can create a new factory, like sharing growth and say, take the best existing and go and get yourself really well organised to do that. But in this case, I thought, okay, we're going to go and do something profoundly radical. So he said, okay, this right to left vision thing. So we can set off in two ways. You can either do the left-hand journey, one step at a time, sticky plaster, that's a nice bit of evolution, there's a nice research paper, I can build on that. Or you can say, up there, we spend the next 10 years, and I won't say how many hundreds of millions we'd have spent making turbine blades, but it was a lot. So I said, okay, so what I want is $1 million for a sandpit and a team, and people to go and break some things and see if we can actually discover. And we've only got to have a 0.01% chance of success, and it will work. So it was storytelling. So we got the money, and after about 5 months, we found this new machining process. Because I wanted not big grinding wheels, but little ones which you can put on a machine tool and tool change them around. It'd be fast and nimble to make all these 25 features on a turbine blade. So we had this compelling vision, didn't know how to get there. We knew what the size of a prize would be. If we could take 50% out, that's large, shed loads of money. I had a tiger team, a bit like Alex and Paoli, sort of people I like working with, people across the organisation. People who are experts, but also could suspend disbelief and practice what I call ignorance management. The management of ignorance. What is it we don't know? What have we not played with? Where might there be rich pickings? And that's been a really good direction of travel for other things. And in a way that placed it, there's a lovely Japanese concept called Ma, M-A, which is the treasure in the gaps. So the kanji symbol's on the right-hand side, but it's made of the left hand too. So the left, as you see it there, is going to be the gates which open and close. And the treasure is the light which comes in underneath it. And the Japanese are very good at listening to the gaps between the words. If you ask a Japanese person a question, they take 9 seconds to respond, not 0.7 seconds as we do in this country. Because they're thinking, what are you saying? What are you really saying? What are you really, really saying? What's going on here? And they do the same in their flower arranging. It's the gaps between the flowers. They do the same in their music. It's the gaps between. So in a way, when we look at our technology, I found there's such rich pickings. I probably shouldn't be saying this really, to say, you can work on how do we develop what we're already pretty good at, but it's much more interesting again to say, what are we not looking at all? I could say more on another time. To do that, though, you kind of need to take people with you. So this is the S-curve. So competence is up the left-hand side there. So you have an S-curve going up. We invent something. We discover it. We discover some laws of physics. We can make a digital model. We can play. We have a fellow in it. We have people who are experts in it, which is great. And you advance the technology, but it becomes asymptotic. And then there comes the part where actually it's hard to move because people have built their reputation, their careers, and they don't want to be seen to be making mistakes. In Japan, if you make a mistake, it's like snakes and ladders. You get all the way back down again. So the challenge is, how do you get off that technology? So it might be a horse and a cast iron plough to tractors. You've somehow got to take people with you who know enough about agriculture, but prepared to take a risk and crash down to the bottom for a while you make a mess and learn and go back up again to achieve something better. So finding the mindset of people like that, it's fun, but it needs good leadership, which I wasn't brilliant at, but I did have fun trying. So as pioneers on the S-curve, risk it for a biscuit. I'm watching my wife because she hates me saying this. If something doesn't cost you very much, like a biscuit, well, why don't you just try it? I know it's too easy for me to sit down and plan and plot for half an hour what's the shortest way to go to the shops which are only 5 minutes away. And it's ridiculous. Sometimes it's, why don't you just go and try it? Or, this hasn't been tried before, maybe there's a good reason. My sad experience is often there is not a good reason why things haven't been tried in the past, so go and try it. So someone tries singing to the first door, no, they're not interested. Well, they've wasted 5 minutes. And the second, but the third one, they're welcome, they got success, they've got something, they've got engagement there. So I think there's something about persistence, and again, Alex and Paoli alluded to this, nothing is easy and there's frustration, but it needs to keep going. So with this stuff in the turbine factory, we invented Viper grinding. So Viper grinding is these little orange grinding wheels, but what's kind of, you can see the turbine blade having its root forms produced, and when you turn it around, do the other side, and the other 25 features and all the rest of it. And it's much faster than any other normal grinding process. And we discovered that with the help of Turilit, an Austrian grinding wheel company who spent 15 million a year on R&D, and a little bulletproof machine tool where we went and tried stuff out, and after 3 days we found this process an order faster than anything they had got. So their research director came back off his holidays from Spain saying, how on earth did you do that? You know, where's the research? We just risked it for a biscuit. We said, what haven't we tried? So in this process, we have got the wrong grade of wheel. It's much too hard. We have got a coolant going in, which normally goes in about 30 psi to keep the thing wet and cool and carry the bits away. And this was going 1,000 psi. We didn't know you could cut the wheel in half. We didn't know. And it's not into the cut zone, it's into the wheel. So wrong, 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 wrong. And it works. So let's risk it for a biscuit, because we could just try these fast experiments. We knew what we wanted, but we didn't know how to get it. So that was great. the follow-on story was, so Tyrrell, having discovered this, they said, okay, step changes are possible. So 2 years later, they had another massive breakthrough on the grinding process, which is as old as the Egyptians. And they had the mindset of saying, where's my next transformational change going to come from? What I didn't say, and I just want to say briefly, is going back to this turbine factory here, this was an out-of-budget, mega million spend to keep Ron Fair very happy. I was asked to give a presentation to chairman at the time, Sir Ralph Robbins, and we had 10 minutes before they had their executive gourmet dinner. So he walked over and I said, can I tell you a story? Yes. So 40 minutes later, we got approval, and he had cold vegetables, but we got approval. So there's something about storytelling. Because I'm shy and I hate confrontation and I hate people saying no to me, I try very, very hard to understand the psychology of why people make decisions and how to tell stories in different ways and all the rest of it. And it kind of worked. So every capital scheme always got the answer yes for in Rolls-Royce. And with one exception, they're all out of budget and large. So storytelling, taking people with you, you think it could have been done before, but it hadn't. So that's the Viper grinding process. Enough before this, I mean, factories were large and the cost of entry was very high because you needed 100 different machines spread out, and things travelled 1.5, 2 miles between all these machines. But I was creating this thing really. This is the magic machine. I wanted to shovel raw material in and get finished bits out the back end. And it's sort of obvious now, but it was not obvious then that manufacturing could be trivialized like this. And you might say, how far can design be trivialized, or this or that? But asking the stupid questions, so my fantasy is, can I make it in one operation, any part, instant setup, let's go for broke while we're at it. And those machines were not commonly available now. But after 15 years of visiting the Japan factory, this is, you see the guy there, this is an enormous machine which machines things up to 40 foot long and to 5 micron accuracy on the beds. It is amazing what can be done. So this can mill, grind, drill, does everything. It's my magic machine. And they have transformed their artisan factory into an enormous old CNC facility. They're making some parts 2 meters long to 1 micron accuracy. And you think, hang on, 1 degree centigrade will make it grow 20 microns. So how on earth are they doing that? It's a Japanese obsession. The word seiki means precision. So it's been a journey. But part of this is to say, well, okay, a lot has happened. What happens in the next 10, 20 years? Because I think the rate of change is accelerating, not slowing down. So I think with factories, I think, okay, my key learning, these are like stepping stones, which you've got to be crossed if you want a successful factory without getting your face wet. And so I made some catastrophic mistakes in the early days we rearranged an entire factory, took 1%, 2% out of a product cost and nearly lost the business. Because we hadn't said, what is it that a customer really wants? So we want improved quality, but we also really wanted more like 30% cost out. So we discovered, actually, you really got to think, what does the customer want? And it's a bit like if I ask you, what do you think success in your life would be? You probably think, I don't know, I've never really asked. Nobody's ever asked me that question. I haven't thought that through. So there's some listening and playing and coaching skills required to go and find out what it is people really want. So learned a whole load of stuff, which I'm not going to go through now. When I was 30, they realised that I really didn't fit Rolls-Royce at all. So I said, why don't you write your own job description? Which I thought was a really brave HR thing to do. Because it's clearly obvious what I'm not good at doing. I'm lousy at finishing stuff off. But I love doing big picture, visioning, playing, risking, stuff like that. So why don't you write a job description around that, and we'll stop you being technical manager, all these people, because you're clearly not enjoying that and you're no good at it anyway. So that's what I did. But it kind of makes me think, we so want to pigeonhole people, and I understand absolutely why HR wants to do that. I wrote most of the job descriptions in Bristol manufacturing, so I understand why we want to do it, to be fair and all that sort of stuff. But actually, if you look around the room here, there's no clones. Everybody's different. And you're all brilliant at some things and pretty useless at other things, even if you wouldn't say, but your partner might do. So how do we create roles which play to your strengths, which together integrate into a fantastic team? That would be radical, going back to all that sort of stuff. So I've set out to talk about some of the productivity transformations. So for people, at an individual level, fantastic. I didn't say we've also looked at systematically putting into place for an entire organisation what are people's people needs. So do they need coaching? Do they need psychotherapy? Do they need assertiveness? So it's not just to make high-performing teams, but when you look at how well a team's all functioning, you say, well, that's not working well. Is it because your father's died? Or is it because the process is garbage? But it's really diving into those two things first, the process and the people, what's really going on, and saying, how do we provide that? And then we measure the results, and the increase in productivity is spectacular. It's really good. Because who thought that being kind to people, coaching and stuff, was anything but a complete waste of time and money? It's off of the fairies. It is not. It fundamentally transforms the way a place works and people's productivity. So that's been really interesting on the people transformation side. The factory stuff, yeah, we've learned a whole load of stuff. And we do have magic machines. And it's almost now, what is it you really, really would like to design? What would delight the customer? What would transform? And, it's dreaming, daring to ask big questions and not taking anything for granted. And that's so easy when you become experts, say, well, this is the way things are. I guess all of you are familiar with risk management. If I said, hands up anyone who does assumption management. Does anyone do assumption management? No, maybe even vaguely think about it. Yeah, so these are all the things underneath the table. I assume I won't get the money. I assume I can't do this. I assume I can't do that. And they're crippling. So actually it's quite fun to say, well, what are my assumptions? Are they real? Are they just like the troll underneath the bridge? They're not actually anything to be scared of. What are these assumptions? So factory transformations has just been a delight, and most of those changes have been just about planting seeds. 3 years ago, they were making these 2 metre long parts to 2 micron tolerance, and it was just beautiful engineering, really stellar, and this team were clearly really proud of what they'd achieved. And I congratulated them, and I said, when are you going to get to 1 micron then? And there were some unhappy looking faces, as you might imagine. But some people said, I said, well, the reality is in 10 years' time, you will have got down to 1 micron. So do you know what it is that takes 10 years? So I disappeared, having cast that seed, and a year later, they were making parts to 1 micron. Well, I can't say what I did. I think they did 99.9% of it. But it's almost like giving people permission to dream or to think, like the child, why not 5 times? I don't know, why not? Well, come on, let's have fun. And this applies to businesses as well. I didn't really understand that when we did the turbine blade factory, that was probably the first time at Rolls-Royce to see, gosh, we can have beautiful factories, things which for stock exchange increases our share value by when they come and see it. We didn't know we could do that sort of stuff. Because 10 years before, we just get shot of manufacturing, really, and just subcontract it all out like Boeing did. And they said, OK, but if we can do a turbine factory, which is supposed to be a difficult part, why can't we do it on every other part we did? So I then put together a proposal saying, why don't we just do that right across Rolls-Royce? Because it seemed logical and obvious, and I've only got a 2.2, and nobody could tell me why we couldn't do it. So fortunately, I found the director of corporate strategy, Graham Trevarthen, who made a good. Finding dancing partners is really important. Who sort of kind of gets where you're coming from, can see your weaknesses, can help you. So how do we make that happen? So that transformed manufacturing. But now I see the same thing happening with this Japanese organisation. Sort of daring people to go bold, challenging them to say, why not? I don't know. Why not? Well, think about it. Have a fun. Have a play. But as engineers, what I've really discovered to my shock is I thought I was a mechanical engineer who liked inventing processes and machining and manufacturing. But it's stuff, it works in design, and I can't disclose details for obvious reasons, but I'm involved in the corporate sales and marketing strategy. An engineer. IT, law, finance. Because all this stuff that we do in engineering is just inputs and outputs and algorithms and boundary conditions and asking questions in a very systematic sort of way. So I think this whole sort of, what's being that childlike, what's the size of a prize, where do you want to be, size of a prize, don't know how to get there. It's a bit like the skunk works. But I like to sort of comment about sort of having aligned teams, but how they do it, I don't care how they do it, providing we get there. It just works, and you can do things in some ridiculous short time. So almost the end. So you could say, stare at a bird on an iceberg, or you could look over the edge and think, hey, there's so much more to life, whether it's your personal life, what you dream of being, or understanding who you are, what you dream of doing, what you could do, with or without job titles, but it's also seeing it as part of a bigger set of opportunities. So, yeah. And then, almost the end. So I changed this now. So this is actually just saying, hey, this could be me as a court jester, it could be you. But really it's just a liberated person who's able to ask those childlike questions. You can go and make a mess, you can, in a safe space, in a controlled space, protect the customer, but you can go and do stuff like that. You can get more education, and I keep on learning more and more stuff, and I realise how big my ignorance is. Desperately need safe professional people to transition stuff. But I think this one here about, I like Isambard Brunel's stove hat here, dream big dreams. Don't die of boredom. I love this quote from the theologian Tom Wright. He said, "The love of power has laid waste continents and empires." And it's traumatic what we see in the world today. But the power of love has driven weak people to do powerful things. So whether you think you're Superman or not, I think if you care about your life, your family, your workplace, your community, if you find that passion, engage with that. It's remarkable. I still can't logically explain why I've been able to do some of the stuff or seen some of the stuff beyond hating and seeing what way people were treated 50 years ago and wanting a way to actually do something about it. I thought for me the missing transformation is, for me, ideas are easy, but implementation is always where the hard work is. I wish we had sort of agile, I'm now engaging Keith to help with a Japanese organisation, which is like a breath of fresh air. But how to make stuff happen, align teams, agree what we're really trying to achieve rather than everyone's personal pet projects. That's the challenge. So I think for me, sort of, I'm learning from this thing. Thank you, Alex and Paolo and Keith. So, question time, because I'm vaguely on time-ish. Well, I started 5 minutes late, come on.
Everything that happens is my fault.
I'm a court jester. Everything is my fault. Okay. So, do you have any questions? Feel free. If you don't, I just put these questions out here. What stops you going to go and do some of this? I mean, you are doing some of this, clearly. But if you'd like to do more of it, what do you think is missing, or what's your next step? Or do you have a more intelligent question? I'm going to have a glass of water.
Just before we get on to questions, I love the provocation from Peter, which is, what could be possible if you dared to admit that you didn't know what everyone thought you should, and then that in conjunction with following your purpose, I think creates a heady cocktail. And Peter's too modest to say that the turbine blade factory, which for those of you who are here from outside Derby, is a noticeable building, architect designed, as he said, but it secures high quality jobs in the region for 50 years. And then the whole ecosystem that falls off that and what that means for jobs and prosperity is massive. From some guys in a hut for a few weeks exploring the art of the possible without anyone knowing, I think is quite profound. But just before we break for lunch, Abby's got the roving mic. Are there any questions for Peter, our dangerous court jester? Somebody's got some. Lauren.
Sorry.
Hi there. My name's Lauren. I work closely with Alex and Pauli in Orpheus Works, and I'm one of their quirky hires because my background is in secondary school education.
Ooh.
So not engineering at all. But I am a big proponent of the power of questioning.
Yeah.
I think that is absolutely integral to our moving forwards. And I've had a sort of niggling concern for a little while that anything that we do, any change that we instill, is not going to be self-sustaining unless we can teach our teams to ask better questions. In your experience, is it necessary to actually do that explicitly and kind of train people to ask good questions, or do you find that just by modelling it and planting those seeds, that learning comes about organically?
Great question.
Hey.
I think there's a whole load of things that really go with that. I think there's something about teaching people to listen. I think most people do not know how to listen. We don't teach it at school. So I think there's no point asking questions if you're not prepared to listen as well. I think you can be taught to ask good questions. And Helen and I used to help do marriage guidance things, and I think a lot of it is just really simple. It's just how do you ask questions and how do you listen well? And here's some good things to try. But it's almost like a skeleton. Here's a starter system. These work for some people. Give it a try, but make your own treasure chest of questions. So in the book next year, there's a lovely cartoon of a drawer full of questions. What questions work for you? Questions are like fishing bait. None of them work exactly the same every day of the week, but go and try, and what works for you, store that, treasure that, and bring it out on another day. So I think there's something about playing with questions as well. Not expecting them all to work wonderfully, but what works well for you in engaging with somebody. Is that okay? Sorry, I did overrun, didn't I?
Hi, I'm Fred. A question for you, Peter. When you talk about the missing transformation is the way people do projects and programs, could you enlighten your you must have a view on that, and therefore would you mind sharing it?
I think I now realise, and Keith hasn't paid me to say this, but I think when I look back at how I did it, it was enthusiastic, bumbling, compelling vision, and we did do things in a remarkable space of time with the small teams. When we came to the big projects, we overran. And we didn't have the systems, and I didn't have the thinking to think, what is a really good way of organising ourselves? So in hindsight, yes, I look back and think that was a bit of a weak link in the whole system. So I think that's one thing, one transformation I can spot. But I kind of put that up after very limited thinking. That's an obvious one. What I don't know, and be worth thinking about, what else? What's the elephants in our room? What is it we're really missing? You know, we can look back and think of the way we treated women 50 years ago, slaves 200, that's clearly wrong. But what are we doing now which is clearly wrong or could be so much better? What are the things that still need transforming? So I think there's something we can learn from history. Think, how did we do that? You know, why did the vicar have slaves? I mean, that's ridiculous. To how, what can we do going forward? So I think, yeah, elephant spotting is one of my other hobbies. And I'd encourage it, it's great fun. Is that okay? In that case, can I say thank you very much indeed for your patience and enjoy.